All right. So I'm so glad y'all joined us today. So let me tell you about the topics. Our topics today are creating an environment where kids can encounter God's love, worship, and partnering with parents. Three really good topics today. So before we jump in, I want to introduce our panelists. So, panelists, when I say your name, just wave at us so we know it's you. So, Abby Berg, so excited to have Abby on. She has served for a decade, sorry, in children's and family and executive ministries in churches in Western New York, Delaware, and now she's in Minnesota at Waite Park Church in Minneapolis. So, I'm so excited to have Abby on the call today. And then Sheila and James McCorkle. I'm so glad you guys are here. So they serve as director of kids ministry at one church in High Point, North Carolina since June of 2023. They are at Santise Beatty's church, so we're excited to have them on. And you guys have worked in you've worked in kids ministry for 20 plus years. So they bring a lot of wisdom to us today, so I'm excited to have them on. And then we have Josh Dolendorf and Katie McDonald. So they both serve at Lifestream Church in Allendale, Michigan. Josh is the Generations pastor and has served there for the last 10 years. And Katie served as kids director for the last 2 years and was previously a director at a daycare. Awesome. And so I'm glad to have you guys. And then Liz Hoy, she serves as kids pastor at Moncton Wesleyan in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada for the past 10 years and has been serving alongside her husband for 25 years in ministry. And a shout out to Liz. She did a Kingswood Learn class called Running a Kids Ministry. So I kind of started chiming in on a couple of those videos this week and they're fantastic. So it's free, just putting a little plug in there for that. So she's awesome. So we're going to just jump right in. Liz is going to lead us through the topic today of creating an environment where kids can encounter God's love. So Liz, it's all you, girl.
Okay, so let's just put a disclaimer out there now. One, I will have a fidget toy in my hand because I have told me I am undiagnosed high functioning ADHD. So I have this. I also know I'm talking to the choir. So I'm just trying to create thought provoking questions for the day. But I know who I'm talking to, right? And you all are all nodding your head. A lot of these things you're going to know anyway, but sometimes one we forget, and a reminder once in a while is helpful. So what I would just want to do is I'll just share through some of the stuff that I have. It's not a lot, but what I'll put in is some questions in the chat that we can come back to and talk about after. I don't want to stop and talk about it right then because I know sometimes we get caught in one question longer than the other. So I'll toss some questions into the chat as we go. But we were talking about creating an environment to encounter God's love and more, because I know that how often we see somebody, so what curriculum are you using? What songs are you doing? Are you doing small groups or large group? What kind of discipline are you doing? What are you doing for for parents for taking home? What kind of check-in? We're always asking all of those questions. We're always, the minutia, and those things are important, right? But often we don't talk about the environment that we are creating to underpin all of the above and how to create the call that God has brought us, has given to us to bring God's word to the next generation. So it's just what I want to talk about today. So what we have said in Kids World, our environment's called Kids World. We say if the kids feel safe, if they feel loved, and if they have fun, then they are ripe and fertile ground to hear the word of the Lord. But if they are not feeling safe, they're going to tune you out. If they aren't feeling loved or that you even like them, they're going to tune you out. And if they are not having fun, they are going to tune you out if they are bored, right? And so safety is a huge thing. And I'm not talking about the safety that we all need to know, the safety protocols, the crim checks, all those are extremely important and valuable, but what does it mean for safety for our kids? How do our kids feel the safety and stability of our kids ministry? Because I've heard there's specifically one little girl who came and this was the safest place she had of her week, the most stable place she had for the week, right? Where she felt she was loved. She felt no worry and a place where she could come and felt safe. Like that's a huge thing that we need to do for our kids, but also for, the pastor's kids who own the place, right? I know my girls grew up, they owned the place. But we also want them to feel safe. We want them to know that this is their home, their safe place to be, worry-free space that's theirs. But we also want them to know that they're loved. And even more than just liked sometimes, because I can tell you, like you all do, I'm all telling you right now that you all have a kid coming to your mind of a kid that you drives you crazy, that you have zero patience with, you don't want to love on a Sunday morning, you would rather they just not come at all. Am I right? Everybody wave your hands, right? Anyone remember? I know, like mine's Joshua right now. He drives me to insanity. And I would just like him to be gone, really, at times. But how are we creating the environment for him to show that he is loved and that he is liked? Actually, and right now, what I have is and his name is on this. I have 3 names of kids on my fridge, of the ones that drive me nuts, the ones that drive me crazy, the ones that I know that I need to show love to, because I need to be able to show to my teachers, because all my teachers, all of us have kids that drive us crazy. So leading by example of feeling loved and even just liked. So this was the question. See, I'm going to copy and paste and put it in. The question would be, how can we change the way that we see our kids? How can we lead by example to our leaders? What are things that we can do, like put their name on your fridge to remind you to pray for them? Like, what can we do to love every kid differently but equally, right? What can we do? And they also need to have fun, because all of these things set the stage for fertile ground for our kids. Uh, Boring, they tune out, like you said, and feeling unsafe, and if they don't feel loved. But the one thing I will say about love, and actually I think I talked to Chris about this recently, that's really been on my heart and really reevaluating like everything that we do. Like we want to do fun, and sometimes we put fun above everything else. We I've always said that it's easier to find a curriculum that has depth and flash it up than take a fun curriculum and create it to be deep. Like I find, but we're always looking for fun. And I'm all about fun. Like I'm like, let's have a party at all times of the day. I am all for that. And the word that I absolutely hate is balance. I hate that word because most people just use it as a stinking excuse. Balance in my life. So I can have hockey and I can have Jesus, right? Everything is like balance, but the balance of fun, love, safety, but also, depth of teaching, depth of what we're doing. Because we underestimate what the kids can know, what the kids can learn. But the fun, empty fun with no fun, empty fun with no follow up is useless. Fun needs goals. Fun curriculum with no depth is not much of a curriculum at all, because we have like 1 hour. So it's just been something I've really been thinking about lately, of the things that we, our outreach from our worship to our small group times, we want it to be fun, absolutely. But I have to reevaluate often of, does this fun have value? Is it just going, this is culturally acceptable, so this is how I need to pull them in? It just should be fun. But is there like follow up to our outreach events that we're doing? Is there meaning in the fun activity that I did in a small group? Like fun is still valuable, but we need to create it to be valuable fun, not just empty fun. I'm all about fun though. So the question that I would have put out to you, and then we'll come back to these questions too. I'm hoping there'll be some, thought-provoking questions here, and you might be able to come up with something. But if you reevaluated your worship time, is it just jumping around and just all the fun songs? Like, if you reevaluated your worship, would you go, okay, well, we can have fun and jump around, but should we stop beforehand and tell them what the words are, right? Or our classes, are we just playing all the fun games because it's much easier than trying to get them to stop and listen? And even our outreach events and fun? Are we just trying to entice the community, but are we using that fun to our, to the benefit, to the glory of God? So like, I'm just really, maybe it's because I'm getting old, going like, we have like 1 hour a week, but, and are we really using it as well as we should be? So the question I would have would be, if you had to evaluate your ministry right now, you put on new glasses, so to speak, do you feel that you might be out of balance in some areas, that you're too much fun and little less depth? Or maybe you're like, driving it home and you've lost a little bit of the fun edge. If you had to reevaluate what you were doing, do you think that there would be something that you could change, improve on? I mean, we're always trying to do that anyway, right? The second thing, so we talked about safety, fun, and love. But I would also big time say it's also it's also about equipping our kids, that this is their environment. It's not mine. I'm helping to lead them. I'm helping to equip them to know that this is their space. They have ownership over this place. They want to help. Yes, please. Everything in my world has a name. So if they want to know how to help, they all know where, like, that's the loft, that's the upper loft, this is the backstage, and there's also a backstage in my world. Every place has a certain name so that they all know where to go. You need to help me, by all means. And if I can't find a job for you, I try very hard to find something for them and like really give them ownership, because if this is going to be their environment, one, they want to feel safe, fun, and feel loved, but they want to own this place. There's an interesting story, which you all have your own stories, but there was this Matthew Owen. He was in my grade 3 boys. He would kick everybody in the head. He would sit there, he'd have his feet up, he'd whack him in the head, he'd poke everybody. He was an extremely smart boy from a good home who, followed Christ. But he could not listen for love nor money. So it was interesting. What I did is how the Lord brings you those moments sometimes going, oh, thank you for that. I would never have thought of this. Matthew, do you like kids? I love kids. Awesome. How would you like to help me with the kindergarten boys? Well, that boy, he has the attendance sheet in hand. He knows particular kids and what they like. He knows what this guy is always scared. So he sits there with his arm around him. He owned what we gave him. He owned his leadership, and he is a completely different boy. And he's still learning because he's still listening to the lessons and still taking it in. But at the same time, he has ownership, and we are equipping our kids to own the church, because we want them to own it later. It's their church. They're the next generation coming up. So we often underestimate what they can do. So it goes to grade 6 in our ministry. So we ask them to be grade 7 when they're official, but we actually have grade 5s and grade 6s that actually go and sit with the kindergartens or the grade 1s, and which many of you probably already do that. But what a huge difference it does for them, and actually raises them up to have ownership in in our church. So this is the other question. What are some things that you have done that has allowed you to turn over leadership and ownership to the kids? We actually have done, which Stephanie, I've talked about this before. I think Stephanie, you even did that before, CKL, we call it Creative Kids Leadership, where I met with them once a month. I have about 10 to 12 kids, and we meet once a month, and I ask them what they like and what they don't like about kids' world. They've actually given me a lot of ideas and names and topics that they share, and then we give them homework. We sit and we share about things that are meaningful to them, and we go through a book. Anyway, it's really great. But what we also do, which I lied, I haven't done it for a couple of years, which I need to get back to this year, is what the plan is they do a kids takeover. So they actually do the entire morning. So one of them chooses, and they do my part. They're the preacher of the morning. I have a couple of them who lead worship. I have one who comes up and does prayer and whatever. So like they take the kids on this, people on the stage is only the kids, and they take over the morning, and it's truly wonderful. It's really fun to watch. So the last thing I'll say, because I won't keep you forever, I thought I won't be able to talk for 20 minutes, and look at me.
You're good.
My husband's like, you'll be fine, dear. So the one thing I would say is all of it starts with you and it starts with me. If we are not passionate, we don't have love and um, we aren't giving ownership to kids. It all starts with us. I guess we even talked about that a couple cohorts ago of how many of us stop to enjoy the morning. It's really hard because we're always thinking about all the things we got to do, all the places we got to be, who's missing, who's not missing. Johnny's just been lost down the hallway. We have to go find him. So how many have actually stopped and enjoyed, Sunday morning at the frantic pace? Um, but we lead by example. We set the stage. If we enjoy it, our kids and our leaders will also enjoy it. They will see your passion. They will see your joy. Like one of my greatest joys, I mean, even this morning we had a mom's group that was here, and one little girl came by to show me she's going to get a band-aid on her hangnail. I think I was looking at the right finger, but like it was just a joy to talk to kids and to see the joy on their faces. The minuscule little hangnail that had to have the band-aid, right? Or and I think of Wild Man Joshua. I think of Wild Man Joshua, who we have kids cash. Well, you can buy Mentos with your kids cash at the cafe. And he has decided he's going to sell during Kids World. So he has a pack of Mentos he bought for 100 kids cash, and he sells each one for 25 during Kids World. Like it's just like when you like the boy, like it's fun. Like, what are the fun things that you can find to create, like to reignite the passion that you once had or create new passion? Like, what are the things that you can stop and think about and enjoy? Because we're equipping our kids and our leaders by example, and our passion needs to be reignited because kids, man, people, we work hard. There is like we are running a small church. The sound and the leaders, and you got to do check-in no matter the size of the church, or like you are running a little church on your own and all of the ins and outs. So how are you? Well, here, let me put my question in the little chat. Hold on. Where do you stand right now? Are you purposely looking for things that bring you joy to keep you to ignite your passion for kids coming to Christ? And are you having fun? So are you being purposeful and being thoughtful in your passion? Because I think that's just as important as making sure you've got leaders in place. I think you finding your passion on a Sunday morning and through the week is just as important as knowing whether you're going to do small groups or large group or what curriculum you're going to do. And I think that should be just as much time that we take in finding that passion and purpose. Be thoughtful, be in your passion, be purposeful in what you want to do, because these things are important and you're going to feel your passion. The volunteers are, and the kids are going to feel your passion for life, for them, and for Christ. Your kids will feel it. And I know you're tired. I am. Golly, I just had, well, I was telling Stephanie, it was a crazy 2 weeks, right? And my assistant just quit yesterday, and I have like a very large Easter, event coming up next week. No big deal, right? We're tired, but what can we do to stop and find that passion? Because you are the leaders that undergird the passion that comes out of your kids' ministry. That's probably it, Stephanie.
So good.
I've talked enough.
No, you
Look,
have.
it was. It's terribly.
Anyone wants to find joy and passion in kids ministry, just talk to Liz. Like legitimate. Like she is the most fun person. The first cohort, I saw you playing with your little thing. I'm like, I adore her. Like this is just wonderful. So Liz, that when I first met Liz, she just made me laugh the entire time. And so like you definitely, Liz, do an incredible job finding joy in what you do. And it shines through what you say and what you do. So I love that so much. Can we jump into a couple of your questions? And maybe
Yes,
like
please. You
talk
take
about
over,
this a
Stephanie.
little bit.
You run with those.
Oh, I don't need to take over. You did fantastic. So I'm just gonna pick a couple. Let's do the second one. If you had to evaluate your ministry right now, put on new glasses to speak, do you feel you might be out of balance in some areas? I'll go first. probably closer to right before I resigned, I started to do that. I was like, what are we missing? Like, what am I not doing? Like, I totally get what Liz said as far as like the fun, and like I was all about fun. Like if we weren't having fun, like we weren't doing our jobs, like we want kids to leave and have fun. But there came this point when I was like, okay, like let's evaluate, like, are we missing basic stuff? And so like one of those, and I hate to admit this on here, but it's true. It took forever for kids to find scripture in the Bible, right? So you say like, hey, let's find and locate this passage or whatever. And I mean, sometimes it took like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay, guys, like we really have to get through my lesson that I prepared. Um, and it hit me like, why are we rushing that? Like, why are we rushing God's word? Like, and so we totally changed up what we did. Like, the moment the kids walked in, we had a passage on the screen, like the passage that we were going to talk about that day. Kids found it. When they found it, they bookmarked it in their Bible, like they earned a sticker or whatever, and then like it was so easy for them to go to. So like we just tried to evaluate, like, what are the basic simple things that we might have let go of for fun and that we want to come back to. So that was one of those. What about y'all? What are some things that you might have seen or noticed that have been out of balance? Any of our panelists want to share some of that, or anybody?
Yeah, when we heard that question, we were looking at each other. We did a little assessment a little bit ago and realized that since we cut out our Wednesday night program, because there was a lot of work that put into it, we lost a lot of our fun element. That Wednesday night was that fun piece. And our Sunday mornings, it is a lot more okay, we're going to this station, we're doing this, going in the small group. So we've been trying to be more intentional about adding that fun back in. The kids love it. They really enjoy coming to spaces, but a lot of that isn't on us. It's the small group leaders. They just love their leaders. So now we're trying to match the energy that the small group leaders bring and make more fun as part of the ministry and one of our core values.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Okay, so let's go to another question. So, what are some things that you have done that, I love this question, that you have allowed you to turn over leadership and ownership to your kids? I'm 100% on the same page as Liz in this, that we start young to have kids have the ability to serve and love their church and love what they do. So, like, how do you do that in your kids' ministry?
This will tie in a little bit to some of what we're talking about later in terms of engaging boys. But we had a boy who was, he's in second grade and he's just really not into singing, and especially singing with motions. It's just not his thing. Like whenever we have the kids singing at VBS or on a Sunday morning, it is a real chore for him because it's not his thing. So rather than continuing to fight that for the Christmas program, we had a whole bunch of music. And so I put him in charge of tech, and he was responsible for starting and ending each song. His dad works on the soundboard in the regular Sunday morning service. So we scheduled his dad for the day of the Christmas program, and they were back there together. He knew what songs and what order they were supposed to go, and they worked together, and it was fantastic. He had a great time. He did a fantastic job, and he was way more engaged than trying to get this little boy to sing and do motions in front of
Yes,
everybody.
love that.
That's what we do as well. We, the fourth and fifth graders are the ones that run my tech for me, and I have to rotate through them because they all want to do it all the time. I have third graders asking me all the time, "Can I do it?" And I said, "Nope, you got to wait." And so it's something they look forward to. And another thing that we do that kind of relates to looking for scripture, when we do look for it in the worship, I mean, some of those older kids can do it so quickly. And I'll say, find someone younger that you can go and help. Like, not just me and the leaders in the room. You go and help someone younger than you. Find that verse. And it's really great to see when they do that.
Mhm. Something else.
I'm part of a church plant that we set up and tear down every week, and I have a group of kids who's there early because their parents are helping set up, and the kids jump in and start helping set up their space too. And some weeks they have a lot of fun with it, other weeks they're not quite as motivated, but but yeah, they like even the 4-year-old has fun getting out all the toys they get to play with, and things like that. So it's good time.
Talk about ownership right there.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Hey, Stephanie, for our bookworm kids, we love to send them to like the pre-K classes or the nursery classes and just have them do the Bible story and maybe even just teach them their Bible verse for the day. And they love that.
Love that. Yes. So good. Awesome. Anyone else want to share on that one? Great ideas. So let's kind of jump. Liz, thank you so much. That was such a valuable conversation. And I feel like we could have a much longer conversation about this. I would suggest that you take those questions and maybe write them down or copy and paste them into another document and evaluate those with maybe your team or just in, some time next week. Like, hey, like, how would I answer some of these questions? To kind of create that environment where God's love is so evident in our kids and in our environment. So awesome job, Liz. Thank you so much. So I think that does take us really well into our next conversation, which is worship. And so I want you to make sure that your questions are answered so I can kind of kick one off and then our panelists can kind of respond to that. And then I'd love for you guys to shoot some questions out. I know that we can talk about the boys in worship. That's a big thing. Josh is laughing over there. So one of my questions I would have is, how do you explain worship to your kids? So like, sometimes when kids go into adult worship, they see people raising their hands if they're singing, or like there's different ways that people do respond to music in worship or whatever. Do you have conversations with your kids about that? And what does that look like?
I think one thing that we've tried to do, especially with our older, with 4th and 5th graders, tried to say that worship is a lifestyle, that everything we do is out of an act of worship. But then we have these set times when we listen during our teaching times. That's how we can worship and listen. When we have singing times, that's just a way that we get to vocalize our worship. So we always have those, 5th grade boys that are just too cool to do the motions. Whether they want to do the motions or not, we show them that even the posture you take, whether you're just singing, whether you're jumping around, whatever you're doing in that, is it an act of worship to God? So we try to frame it in a question back. Does that seem, what you want to do, is that going to be seen as worship?
I love that. Anyone else?
Yeah, we take some time at the beginning of each unit. Our church uses Wonderink, which I know a lot of you heard about in a previous cohort. But at the beginning of each unit, we actually bring all of the kids together for an entire Sunday that we call Worship Week. And we do like big corporate worship things with them. So some of that is singing, but we'll also do like the declaration from the unit together. We do lots of tangible prayer activities, like they'll pray responsively with scripture. Sometimes we'll give them some tactile elements to use as they pray. But we use that time to help them really experiment with different forms of worship. And we try not to pigeonhole worship into singing songs.
I love that. So you bring preschool through elementary together in one space?
Yeah, it's 2-year-olds through 5th grade. So the 2s and
Wow.
3s stay for the first part and then they're dismissed because they need a
Yeah.
little more wiggle time. But yeah, it's everybody all together for that
Wow.
time.
How long have you done that?
That's been something that we started this year.
Cool.
Because we really, a lot of our teachers, when we were doing our curriculum evaluation and just like a general evaluation of ministry, and really determined that we wanted to help our kids lean more into worship and into that actual relationship that they have with Jesus, less information and more relationship. So that was one of the things we decided to try.
That's beautiful. Love it.
How many kids do you have altogether in that room?
It's like 35. So it's not, it's a little bit easier for us to do with a smaller group.
Sure. Great. Someone else.
Another thing that we do is we encourage our fifth graders, like the squirrely boys, to be better examples for those kindergarteners and first graders who are new to that space, and just say, okay, you are teaching them that this is an outward sign that we get to do together and worship together on Sundays.
Mhm. What a great use of boys and fifth graders. I mean, sorry to all the guys that we keep referring to that. Like, I'm not against you, but we all know it's a struggle.
Like, you know, we know those boys that try to think they're too cool for it.
Yeah.
In the adult boy leaders though too, like even having Josh's presence is very helpful in our boy leaders to be good examples to worship together. They're putting their hands up, they're dancing.
Actually, we found 2 sophomore boys that just own it. They love it and they got a lot of energy.
They do.
But when we brought them in, all the boys were like, yeah, I jump around. Yeah, I want to put my hands up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I so highly value men serving in kids ministry. Like we went out of our way to find and ask, tap men on the shoulder and say, we really could use you, because we need good male spiritual role models for our boys. So yeah, I love it. Who was going to say something? I interrupted.
No, I was just going to echo that, the importance of having men as leaders in your children's ministry space. It's invaluable. I've been very intentional and semi-aggressive in recruiting guys to join our children's ministry team because we need them. There was a guy that mentioned just in passing at a church event that he had taught kindergarten. Like you're not going to get away from children's ministry now. You told me that you're not only a guy, but you also taught kindergarten. You are definitely going to serve at some point in Kids Park.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
And
too, some of it has, again, music is not worship, or that's not the only way to worship. So I think also when you think about your music set, can you actually, do you believe that you can worship through high energy, high movement music? So some people believe you can only worship it on the third song that's slow and in the third chorus. That's when hands go up. So like, again, if you program it that way intentionally, maybe you can manipulate that to work. But also I think especially with kids and attention spans, if you program your music to be all slow songs, you're probably not going to get the participation that you want. So again, not that you can't program slower songs, although personally, I try not to program a lot of slower songs because of development, primarily in kids' development. So because the reflection, it's not as concrete as it is with an adult because of attention span and development. So think about the songs and stuff that you do program to make them engaging in that part of worship.
I use sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I tried to at least incorporate one just to kind of get them to that place of just to transition from a high energy song to something to kind of prepare their heart for worship. But I do think what you choose is very important. There's sometimes when I'll ask the worship pastor, because when we have family worship, we want to have songs the kids know, they can participate in worship. But some of them just are not ideal for children, like talking about what God has done for you in the past and certain things. So I try to be very picky about, especially the slow songs, that it's not too abstract, that it's about trust and love, and, just keep it on the simpler end, but still, and sometimes I don't do motions at all. Like we have one song that is just so incredibly beautiful on its own. It's just about praising him and worshiping him, and we don't do much of anything motion wise, but I do try to emphasize, especially when I start to get maybe some eye rolls from the older boys, this is not about us. this is our praise and thankfulness. And that's what our worship is, to praise him for who he is, what he has done for us, that he sent Jesus, all of those things. But I don't require them to do the motions either. It's okay if you don't do them, but I am asking you to make sure your posture is correct. If you stand, I do require them to stand because I think that's an act of reverence. But you don't have to sing if you want to. You don't have to do the motions if you want to. If you want to do different motions, or just raise your hands or close your eyes or whatever. And I have kids take advantage of that. We're not an aerobics team here, so if you're not doing all the moves, it's okay. It's just, where is your heart in it? And, oh gosh, when they'll say, I don't like this one, it's not about you. It's not about you. And that's just giving instruction because they're children. They don't know what worship is, and that it's more than just doing something. It is your expression of worship, whether it's music or getting along with your friends or, all the things that encompass what that is. So
I love how you talked about picking songs that are very concrete. I think that's very wise.
it's very confusing. And some songs, like I'll listen to them on the radio, I'm like, oh man, this is a great song. I love this. But is it relatable to a child?
Right.
And not all of them are.
Exactly. Liz, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to talk about the words, but then also going back to what you said, and a lot of them are thinly veiled, like not about Jesus at all, right? Like they're fun and great songs, and they're like seem simple and easy, but then you're like, I could add that to my boyfriend or my brother. Like there's just like the words are really important in what you're saying, but also I think we miss the opportunity sometimes to point out what the words are, because kids sing the songs on the radio and they don't even know what they're singing, right? So the same thing in church. Half the time they don't actually still know what they're singing. We think they do because they're, they are singing. But if we sometimes intentionally take time to say, this is what you're singing, this is what this means, and like, oh, right. Taking some of that time beforehand to do some teaching about what they're actually singing. But that's what.
Any questions that you guys have on worship that you brought to the table?
One actually sprung out from what Doreen said there about talking with your worship pastor. Does anyone else have any connection with, songs that we sing in kids ministry versus songs that might be on Sunday morning? So there's some symmetry. So students and whoever goes to a family service hears that same song and can sing along.
So we are definitely doing that at one church. We are a multi-ethnic church, and so it's really important for us to make sure the kids not only are connecting with the songs that their parents are singing, but also in different languages. So Spanish is big in our church. Probably 20 to 30% of our church is from the Spanish population. So we incorporate songs like right now we're singing Famous For in children's church, and it's a version that is English and Spanish, and we see that really brings the kids alive that are Spanish speaking, and they actually worship in front when the Spanish music comes on, so it kind of lights them up. Another thing that I'll just add is that we are talking to the kids very regularly about their gifts. We're questioning them, like, what are the gifts and talents God has given you? And we talk through that because using those gifts and talents is a form of worship, anytime during the ministry, but especially during the worship time. So we have quite a few kids that don't really like to sing and engage or dance and do those things, but they are incredible artists. So as they begin to talk about their gifts and talents, we provide paper and clipboards and pencils, and we ask them during worship to draw what they see, draw what God is speaking to them through the words of the songs that we're singing. And so we've got children that are sitting and they're not participating like we would expect them to. But at the end of worship, they're bringing their pictures to the front and they are explaining to us the visions that God was giving them or what the song meant to them. I know last week a little girl actually drew me, and worship is my love language. So my hands were up, my heart was big, the tears were rolling. You know, she really drew what she saw me doing in my own form of worship. So that has been really good to start to just unlock like these gifts these kids have in there that are worship, and teaching them that that is a form of worship. That is beautiful. God is pleased with your art during worship time. I know that even in the dance time, we have some autistic children that don't necessarily sing. We can't keep their attention for long, but a few of them are the best little ballerinas, and you will catch them somewhere away from the crowd, but in a place where they can just do their ballerina, and they are literally staring into the heavens. And it's the most beautiful thing. And so that form of worship, we took a Wednesday night and made our own little flags, and the kids who just loved a flag will bring their flags, or they'll borrow flags from their parents out of big church, or and so they're actually flagging during worship because they need to move, and they're experiencing the Holy Spirit through flagging. So it's just amazing if we start asking the questions, not necessarily how do you worship, but what are your gifts, what are your talents, what is the Holy Spirit speaking to you during worship time. We'll find out that there's lots of things these kids can do that are forms of worship that are just not that traditional worship that we think about.
That is literally so beautiful. I love that so much. If a child brought a picture of me worshiping, like I literally would have melted. I would have cried.
I
Like,
did.
yeah, like that, just like her seeing an adult worship God with abandon like that, there isn't a more beautiful picture for that child to draw right there. I love all of those ideas that you gave us, and so easy to implement into our worship spaces. I think sometimes we put ourselves in a box and say, here's how we're going to do the dance moves today, when it comes to worship. I've done that. So this is just that's incredible. Anything else before we kind of move to the next topic? Great conversation. Does anyone do intergenerational worship where you take the kids into worship with their parents, or like do you do that once a month on a regular basis? Like what does that look like for y'all?
We do that occasionally. I we're working on making it better. Um, but our soon to be fourth and fifth, but our current fourth through sixth, start every single week in worship with their parents, and then they go to their classroom after that, and they do a small group based class. But then on either fifth Sundays or holidays, like this month it's both for Easter, our preschool and up go into service with their parents, and we do family Sunday. Um, I'm working on making it better. Instead of just calling it Family Sunday, but it's really just the kids sitting in service. But like to work with our worship director and our pastor to say like, hey, can we actually make this like intergenerational family focused? But for right now, before we figure out a solution, what I've been doing is I've been taking their lessons that they would be doing in their classrooms, and I put them in like a little lesson box. And when they sign up for a lesson box, they have that for the class and for the service. And so during worship, they're worshiping with their parents. But during the sermon, when it's always going over their head anyways, they have their own in-service, self-led, age-appropriate activities to do with that box. And then at home, they've got some more that they can do with their parents. So
We have a fifth, whenever there's a month with 5 Sundays, we do a family worship. And I fought for it for a long time. And when we started, it was just like the kids are in the room. There wasn't much emphasis to it. New leadership, new worship pastor. We have really emphasized it so much that I think for most of us, it's one of our favorite Sundays. Our youth band plays. The youth pastor and I sit down, and there's always one of them that reads the scripture for the pastor before he preaches for the day. They help with announcements. I type out little cards so they know what to say, and there's an adult with them, and they help lead them through that. But they're standing in front of the entire church. reading the few announcements. We try to keep it minimal. The youth band plays. If there is a cohesive song, which we have done that in the past, the problem we've run into is the youth band isn't as well versed as like the regular worship band. So they're not always able to learn the songs that we know. We do have a couple that cross over, and then we'll have a couple of kids on the stage. And I'm in the front because I don't want them to feel like they're alone. I'm on the front where they can see me, and we do our motions. And it's fun because in those moments, like my leaders that are also in the room, even though like 90% of the room is not doing any motions, they're doing them, and they're showing the church that, this is what our worship looks like. It's the same, but it varies, and it's, so the kids will lead in that way. We just had a family Sunday this past Sunday because we didn't want to do it on Easter Sunday. So it was so beautiful. We had a baptism at the beginning of the service. Our Hispanic church was there. So they baptized a few. And then we did some youth baptisms, and then I got in there and we did some kid baptisms. And it was just to have everyone in the room together. It was really sweet. And I think leadership helps a lot make these kinds of things happen. If your pastor supports it, it makes just such a world of difference. And honestly, he says it, and I believe him. It is one of our favorite Sundays across the board. The church kind of resisted a little at first. Like some of the parents are like, "What? You want my kids in here, for this long?" And I'm like, "Look, I know they can do it because they do it for me every Sunday. Now it's going to look different." And I believe our pastor kind of changes his sermon. He's a great pastor and he's funny, so he can keep attention anyways. But and tries to adapt it somewhat, but he certainly doesn't water it down when the kids are in there either. So and sometimes I don't give them things to do because I'm afraid it would keep them from, their attention on the pastor. I might do like a sermon note thing where they listen for the pastor to say certain things, or there are little pictures to color, but which is certainly better than them sitting on their mom's phone, so things like that, if I can incorporate that in. But it's a wonderful Sunday. We love it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Doreen, that it makes a big difference when you have leadership that's bought into that. Like, I think we have a huge advantage at Waite Park, both that we're a smaller church, so we can have our kids in the service every week, but also leadership at the pastoral level, but also at all of our ministry leader levels. They're really bought into this idea of intergenerational worship and having our kids incorporated. So we talk often about how kids are welcome. If you hear a baby crying, it's a sign that the church is alive. And that if you hear kids wiggling or things like that, like, we welcome that. That is part of our worship experience. That is part of who we are as Waite Park Church.
If you think about it, us adults really need to see that. Not necessarily kids ministry leaders, but like the adults in our church need to see the children. I just think about, we're in a place right now where we're trying to transition to more of that. We do the fifth Sunday, and the Holy Spirit's really been moving for us to start having the kids in worship more often, so that they can worship with their families, their parents, but so the adults can see these children. Because I just think biblically about, the disciples saying, "Oh, don't send the children to Jesus. They might bother Jesus," and I feel like sort of that's the way we feel at a high, kind of at a surface level is, "Oh, it'll be a distraction. Oh, the kids will bother people." But that's sort of what the disciples said, right? But Jesus was like, "No, bring them. I'm here for them." And so I just see that as such an advantage to us as adults to see the freedom of how children express themselves. And I believe that if we can do more of that, then we are going to break down a lot of barriers in our own worship as adults. The fears, the holding back of just freely being able to worship. We're going to learn that from our children. So yeah, we're kind of in that transition phase where we're trying to do a little bit more of that intergenerational so that we can benefit from that as adults.
It's funny because when you look at like a service like that, you think, oh, the kids are going to receive so much, when they see their parents. And yes, there's an element of that. But I agree with you. Like, it's so much more like the church body has to see our children. I'm way in the basement. I call it the dungeon. It's a beautiful dungeon. But, if you don't have a child, you don't see what's going on. you go in on the upper level and you just are oblivious when we're very traditional around Easter. So we'll do the palms on Sunday. And every year we do them, they just go bonkers. And a lot of them will say, I didn't realize we had this many kids down there. I'm like, well, come join us sometime. We have more fun anyways, come down and see what's going on. Any chance to get them in front of the congregation is so huge, because like where I'm at, we do have our own kids worship every Sunday. The only Sunday we are in the sanctuary is when we do the family worship. And I don't know if you guys struggle with this, but it's I'm kind of like on the fence, because I love when the kids are in the service, but I believe so much in what we do in our kid worship because it is age appropriate. Like we think through, is this concrete? Is this abstract? Are they going to get it? Are they not going to get it? An adult pastor, as much as he wants to, he can't always do that because you're talking about adults. So I struggle because like I grew up just going to junior church, which was, when the preaching would begin and we'd do Bible drills, but I believe that, what we do is so important. I wouldn't want to give that up all the time. And maybe that's why the family worship has brought such value, because it does get the kids in front of the church and kind of we all are of one mind and spirit in that moment. And they see us and we see them, and the value of that. So.
And the church to see them, but the kids to see adults.
Yeah. It goes both ways for sure.
To worship, like it's a beautiful thing to watch. So, awesome. So let's jump into our last conversation about partnering with parents. This is always something that everybody wants more ideas about. And so, let's talk a little bit just quickly about what are some ways that you do partner with parents? How do you equip them? We had a conversation on one of our Connect calls about this a little bit. Let's just go a little deeper with some more conversations of how do you help equip them to disciple their kids at home? I mean, we all know the 1 hour a week, it's usually only about like 42 hours a year kind of thing. So what does that look like in your context?
We send a weekly Friday family flash email to all of our families. And it's just we're sharing a family faith tip and then a resource that we would recommend, and then like a preview of what's going to be coming up the next Sunday morning. And then we'll also throw some calendar things in there, like if there's something upcoming for the kids. But the point of that is to give them something really easy and tangible every week to be able to implement in their home. And that was birthed out of a breakout at the D6 conference, where someone challenged us, if you could give parents just like 3 things, or like even if it was just one thing every week, like what would that be? And so that's how that email kind of developed. And it's one of the highest rated things that our ministry puts out for them.
I like that it's in an email format, because a lot of times we know that the papers go in the back seat and they never get read. And I still always send them home, because like if one parent reads it, it's worth it for me. But the email makes a lot of sense. I mean, they will open an email or a text.
Yeah, and we link the handouts that will go home on a Sunday morning. They're linked in that Friday family flash. So even if the paper disappears, they have the link in the email.
Abby, is there any way you could show us what one of those looks like? Like
Sure.
send forward one to Stephanie, and then we can view it.
Yeah.
Or if you put one up on your screen while we're finishing the conversation, you can share your screen. I don't know if you do that.
I'm actually on my phone.
Oh.
Okay. I have a terrible camera on my laptop, so I have to do Zoom on a phone.
Just send it to me and I can send it on to them.
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome idea. Forward family flash. You can't
Friday
say
Friday family flash.
Say that fast. I love it. Anyone else? What do you do to equip your parents?
I had a follow-up question on the email.
Yes.
So I had done that as well. My parents hate emails. All of them are like, I don't want any emails. Outside of like the few like occasional really important ones. So I'm like, okay, but like I want to bring resources for you to, do all the things that family flash does. So, is there anything that you guys do to communicate with parents outside of emails in a different format?
I have found if I text, now I can't possibly fit all the info I want them to know into a text. Sometimes, and this kind of this is not the ideal situation. I'm moving towards the ideal. I will send the email and then send out a text, especially if it's something very important like camp information or something. I'll say, hey guys, I sent an email. Don't miss it. There's lots of details. But I've started to use more Google Docs. And I think if you could somehow link a Google Doc to the, like send them a text, are they more responsive to text?
I mean, I think
Some,
you just have to know your people. That's
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
thing.
it's
Like there's
different for
another,
everybody. Yeah, I
exactly.
agree.
There's another family ministry director like a couple miles down the road from me. And she was just saying the other day at our networking meeting, she was like, yeah, like our families don't do email, but they're on Instagram. So I put all this stuff on like our kids' Instagram, and we have very few of our parents at Wake Park on social media. It's a blessing and a curse that they're not on social media, but also it makes it harder in some ways to communicate with them. So you got to know your people. If an email is what works for your congregation, great. If
Do
it's a
it.
text that works, also great. But just whatever avenue works. I actually went around and I asked each of our families, like, how would you want to receive information? And email was the thing that came to the surface. So that's why that works for us. But you don't have to be pigeonholed into an email.
Yeah. So if you wanted to kind of put it in a different format that it's still kind of an email format, that's where that you could initially send it through a text and you might get more responses that way, even though it is an email, but be very easy on your phone just to click the link, read through it, and then they don't have to check their email in any way, I would think.
We've
does
taken
anybody
our,
use the Church Center app? Sorry.
The what?
we've taken email and we put it into a QR code and we posted it on
Yeah.
a poster. And we put it in the Parent Resource Center. So you just scan it and you don't even have to open an email. It's just already open for you. It's all of our information that goes out once a month anyways.
Yeah. That would work the same as a link, but you know, ways to get it to them, however they'll receive it is the key to figuring out, like what Abby said, knowing how to best reach them.
Shelly, what app did you ask about?
The Church Center app, does anybody use that to communicate with parents? Okay.
Is that does it have like a database kind of feature to it?
Yeah,
So-
so it's an app that responds directly with Planning Center and a few other
Oh.
like church databases, but basically you can put all of your announcements, your links, your website, all of that stuff through it, and theoretically you can send announcements, which are 300 characters. I mean, they're short, they're not full email length, but something of like, hey, reminder, it's Family Sunday this Sunday or whatever. Those announcements can be sent out quickly through there. And you can send out an announcement to say, hey, look at the new newsletter, look at the new lessons or something like that. So I was wondering if that's gone well for anybody, because we're starting to move toward that to see if it works for us.
What's the name of that again? I'm sorry. I know you've said it like 3,000 times, but I'm old and I didn't write it down.
Church Center.
Church Center.
So we've tried a couple different things. We realized that for Church Center, people just want to see what's going on. They don't want to get the notifications. So we make sure that all of our events and all the big things that they need to know are on there with all the specifics. But we found that if we try to do it, then this ministry tries to do it, and that ministry tries to do it, and they just turn off notifications. But if the info is on there, we try to let them know, hey, you can check in your kids through here. Like we try to partner up with the whole church, but our info is there.
That's great. Any other thoughts on that? I'd not heard of that app today, so check that out.
If you use Planning Center, they have like 18 apps. They have one for each attachment. But the Church Center one is the one that should be for a congregation mostly. That if you get your church to go in on it and you get the congregation to get it, it's so helpful. But
It just takes forever to get in there.
Yep. Also, our Wi-Fi died out on the last one, but I wanted to show, I don't know if you can see a picture. So we did, last time our congregation did the kids motions, and it was just a beautiful moment. We had the kids leading up from stage and the whole church was doing it. Still one of our favorite worship times.
I love that. That is awesome.
Definitely.
Love it.
We got another one again this week for Palm Sunday.
Yes, I bet a lot of churches will do that for Palm Sunday. Do you guys have a parent resource center? And if you do, what do you put in there? Do I found that we like changed out our books and we had books and announcements and sheets they could take and all that stuff, but it got to this point where people just walked by it. So like it kind of became like normal to them. So what do you put in it and how do you keep it fresh?
So our parent resource area is right at the top of the stairs when you're bringing your kids up or picking them up from Kids Park. So it's something that people are walking past all the time. So we put books that we would recommend, like especially ones that we mentioned in the Friday Family Flash. We put them in the resource area so they can peruse them before they would buy it online. And there's like handouts that we leave there, resources that we would recommend, Bibles if they need a Bible for their kid, those are available there. But I get what you're saying, Stephanie, where it's easy for that to become just something they walk past. And so we talk about it often. There'll be times that we're pointing to, hey, make sure you stop by the resource center to see this thing that we're highlighting here. And occasionally we also put that in our just general church-wide email because we want not just parents, but other people in the church to be aware that like we care about parents and caregivers and we're actively resourcing them as well.
I know the focus is really on, kids ministry, but do you guys have a lot of kids that sit in service too, that don't utilize the ministry areas? Okay. We started putting in the coloring sheets, like if they want to choose to sit in service and they want that, we put it at the parent resource center, like right in the middle of it. So they have to go over and then they see what's going on in the kids ministry too, see what the kids are learning. They see, some of the other resources and, we just kind of switched over to that in the past a little bit. So we'll see the long-term effects, but at least they see what's going on in the kids ministry now.
And to try and change that up more frequently too, like we just started the QR code with our email, but that if it's changing every month, it's going to attract more people to it because it's different. So hopefully that kind of encourages parents to at least go scan a QR.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions about partnering with parents? I know it's such a big thing and we want to do that well, don't we? Any other thoughts?
There's one thing that we've done, which we haven't pulled it back out the last couple of years. Kidology, which I know we stole the name. We did it during service because one, it's hard to catch parents to come to anything. So we did, and we did it for younger grades, and then we did it for older grades where a kid came with their parent. Usually it was just one parent, and they came, and we had like muffins and whatever for the morning. And we went through, how do you pray together as a family? How do you do devotions as a family? And there was a quick little video for each. There was a quick little talk about each, and then they actually went in the corner or wherever, and they went and prayed together as a family. Like, do the taco prayer or whatever it was. So, and we did it during church. I know faux pas on the part of the senior pastor, but it was great because the other kids were already occupied in nursery or preschool, so they felt the freedom to be able to come and do that instead of it's through the week where they have other kids. Anyway, it was actually quite a value. And then we had resources after that they could order or buy or look at devotional books and stuff. So we try to do things where it was practical things of teaching them how to bring, Christ into their home. That's what we did.
One of the other things we did, it just hit me when you were saying that, was going back to kind of a little bit about what Abby was saying. In our parent resource center, we had a QR code, and that QR code linked to an Amazon list. And on that Amazon list were all of the things that were on our resource center. So it was a quick, like, hey, if I want to buy this, I can go right here and get it. And so like that was really helpful to our parents because then they didn't have to go and search for anything. It was like right there at their fingertips. So that was one thing that I just kind of remember.
Yeah, we actually let them buy them from our resource center. Actually,
So
they're allowed to buy them from ours.
You buy extra books, like multiples? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we actually have, and Bibles is the big one that brings them back to ours because they're always looking for cool Bibles for every different age group. So we actually, that's mostly what we use it for, our Bibles, devotional books, and like, what's the comic book one? I'm not thinking of it right, but they can actually buy them from us. Yeah, the Action Bible, because a lot of them don't want to go to Amazon. They want to go pull it off the shelf and just e-transfer me. And they also want to be able to peruse it and look at it, which you often can't. But Bibles is a big draw on ours. We have a lot of Bibles and devotional books, but because they want to look for a good Bible, what do I do? So, and Christmas time, there's a lot of that too. But yeah, Bibles is a big draw for our resource center, and ours is on wheels, so we can move it. So we can move it to another place where they're not looking.
Yeah, Bibles were what Bible do I buy my kids? That was always the question. So we always had a bunch of those. So awesome ideas. Y'all, thank you so much for today. I'm excited for people just to take a look at this video and learn from this. Just a couple reminders before we jump off. So this was our last cohort for the spring, but on April 4th, we have our Next Gen Connect call. So we do those every month. We won't be doing those through the summer. So we have one on April 4th. My friend Rachel Sahuk, sorry, from Transformation Church in Charlotte. She's going to talk about summer engagement, and that's always a big thing for us. So she's going to be awesome at that. And then on May 2nd, we have a Connect call with Chris and Katie Mixel. They're at Hope City Church, and they're starting a special needs ministry. And so they're going to kind of talk to us a little bit about what that process has looked like and where they are. And one of the things he said to me is like, we don't have it all done. I was like, that's perfect. Like, we want to know, like, from the beginning, like, how to do this. And so they will be talking with us on May 2nd. So we'd love to have you guys join in. So I appreciate y'all, praying for y'all. Thank you for all you do every week for kids and families. And you're doing an incredible job. So appreciate your wisdom and insight, and hope to see you very soon. Talk to you later.